This is, I believe, the last resiliency class, right? Isn't it the final one?
Yes, it is our last
Yes,
one.
it is.
Yeah. So this is really exciting. I'm so happy to be here with all of you, and very happy to welcome my friend and teacher, Nina Kaufman. I actually met Nina. Hi, Rachel. I met Nina first at Camp Tawanga. When I first went to Camp Tawanga, Nina was like basically the most groovy person walking around camp. Um, and she became a teacher, an educator, a coach. She's actually a certified coach. I'm going to read you a little introduction about Nina, okay? She's the owner and principal of You Design You, a coaching company in San Francisco. She coaches people to improve their skills in areas such as leadership, culture evolution. I want to ask you more about what that means, people management, and inspiring growth in others. And she also does parenting groups, something else I could be interested in, parenting groups and classes to help parents use skills that she teaches for professionals in organizations and teams. Um, She's a certified coach. She has a BS in organizational behavior and leadership from USF. She blends her education with her 20 years of leadership development and work in the Jewish nonprofit community and beyond. Um, I think I said most of it. Didn't I say most of it, Nina?
You did.
Um, and with that, I'm going to let Nina take it from here. Welcome, Nina Kaufman.
Thank you, Marcia. I could say so many amazing things about you as well. And thank you. I'm so excited that we're all here tonight. And thank you all for being here. And in a moment, I want to find out, I want us all to get to find out a little bit more about who is here. But first, I'll say to sort of simplify what I do into just a few words, I get to work with people on basically self awareness and how to change, how to grow, or just how to think in the ways we want and how to feel the way we want, how to take the action that we want to take, whether it's in the work context or in our personal lives. So I think the reason I'm here tonight and why I'm excited to be with you in this resiliency series on our last night is that for some of you have been in some of the programs that have been happening in this resiliency series. And it's been all about thinking about how do we take what's going on in our lives and our circumstances and be resilient, which we know in some ways is I think it's almost like just the first step. Like resiliency is, let's not get knocked down by circumstances. Let's be able to move through them. And tonight, we get to take it even a next step, which I imagine has been happening in several of the other sessions around, and how do I evolve? How do I evolve myself through these moments and these situations? And, I think this whole series was revolving around in the times that we're in right now and in this pandemic. And even tonight, in the last night of this series, so much has changed since the first night of this series, which was just in January, right? The world is in some big transition right now. So it's pretty, I think, relevant for us to be able to think about this tonight and talk about this. And what excites me about being able to talk with us about the idea of resiliency and evolving is that the skills and the tools that we get to talk about tonight, we can really use in any part of our lives. So it's really about thinking about how to become more self-aware in the ways we want to, and how to be who we want in our lives and experience the way that we want to. So before we dive into the topic specifically, I'd love to know from you, and let us all share with each other, if you've come to any of the resiliency classes and which ones. And so if you know how to use the chat box, which I know there's a lot of pieces here to use in Zoom, so congratulations just for being here. If you know how to use the chat box and you've come to any other sessions, or not actually, you could let us know in the chat box. I'd love to know just which topics you've showed up for already. I want to know if our group has been to other sessions or if this is more your first session. So let us know in the chat box. Let's see who's here. And yeah, like we said, it's fine whether you're on screen or not. Judy, I'm so glad you're here. That's fine. And it's great, you're here and we're going to pull it all together. Okay, and how do I pronounce your name?
So
Thais?
it's pronounced Thais. Yeah, that was perfect.
My husband and I went to Sustaining and Nourishing Relationships During Quarantine with Rabbi Bauer. Awesome. Rachel, my first time in this group. Great. Welcome. Frank, been to several sessions. Don't remember what they're called. No problem. And there have been so many great sessions. Okay, so it sounds like a couple of you have been to some of the sessions. Probably a lot of us, it sounds like a lot of us, this is our first one. Lainey, I went to a great session with a therapist, and Rabbi Beth, and I think there was another one too. So much Zoom, definitely. Okay, good. Gene Kaufman, my dad, at Stephen Pierce's first session with my good friend Heidi Winnig also. Judy, first time, welcome. Frank was at the one with Rabbi, and one with Rabbi Bauer, not sure of the others. Great, and Lainey Wright. Yes, okay, amazing. So we're a mixed group of people who have done some of the sessions and who haven't. And like I said, it doesn't matter. I think it's just, we're here because we're interested in this topic. And that is so wonderful. So I am going to show you tonight a tool and a way of thinking and understanding ourselves. And I want it to become our kind of conversation piece, a way for us to think about ourselves and think about what we want. And so I think it's always helpful for us to think about something real in our own lives that would be relevant to the conversation tonight. And so, as I mentioned, I think if we're just going to contain it to one idea for now, I want us to be thinking about this idea of resiliency and evolving. And we may or may not have the goal of evolving in parts of our lives, but even if we just simplify that concept to being and showing up how we want to, and we don't always do that. And to me, that's considered evolving, right? So we have parts of our lives that we may or may not be like feeling the way we want to or doing what we want to, and just to change that is included in this idea of evolving. So I'd love for us to think about and type in the chat box, if you're willing to, if you want to, something in your life right now that you are feeling mixed feelings about. And I'll give you examples. In this time of the pandemic, for example, it is a time of transition for some people. So for example, and I'm going to use myself as an example, for parents with school-age children, for some of us, we're thinking about, we've been a year not in school for a lot of our kids. A lot of our kids have been on Zoom, and they're about to transition into going back to school live, whether that's this year or maybe in the fall. And that's, maybe we have mixed feelings about that. Maybe I'm unsure. I feel good about parts of it. I don't feel really good about parts of it. And that's something I can think about. So I want you to get to think about something in your own life, which again, it can be related to what's going on in the world right now, or it can just be about your own personal relationships or work that you're doing. I want you to try and identify something going on for you. And a transition could be a good clue, but it doesn't have to be that. Just something that you feel you have mixed feelings about. It's not feeling like a resolved part of your life. So again, think about maybe it's a transition due to the pandemic. Maybe it's a health thing going on in your life. Maybe it's a relationship thing going on for you, or a work experience. So great, Frank is starting us off. So in the chat box, you can share something that you're having mixed feelings about. Take a moment to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. These are great. I'm going to start reading out some of the things we're seeing, but take another moment if you're typing, something you're feeling mixed feelings about. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Good. Okay. So good. when we really take a moment to just stop and think about it, it's nice to even just identify it, right? Just to be able to say it and acknowledge it as a first piece here. So I hope for you, it just feels good to even put it out there as a starting point. Yes. Okay, these are really, really good examples, real things going on for us. So I'm going to start reading some of these out just so we can get a sense of just a variety of things that we're thinking about. Frank is thinking about, I have mixed feelings about things opening back up. By the way, keep typing if you're still thinking or typing. You can add it in at any point. Rachel's saying, I feel quite anxious about returning to the incredibly overwhelming world of traffic, social obligations, overcommitting to things, etc. I'm so worried. Judith is saying, my birthday in 5 days. Lainey says, the therapist that you were with in the class, great. Thais, returning to teaching in person, going on the job market this coming fall. Frank says, I also have mixed feelings about doing a Zoom Seder with my family when they're all going to be together and I am the only one remote. Judy says, me too, and things opening up, what's allowed, what's safe, how to maintain my family bubble, grandparents, siblings with mixed vaccination levels. Yeah. Jean says, separation from family and friends. Marcia says, my son and Zoom school. Judy, I feel like I should be feeling more optimistic and solid with the positive shift in vaccines, but I'm exhausted. Judy M says, my birthday in 7 days, Judith, letting us know. Coming out into the world after a year of quarantine with my husband who has dementia. Marcia Felton says, completing good tasks, which I intend to do, and have positive outcomes if I do, but don't take actions. So not honoring my word to myself. That's a really good catch, Marcia. And I think a lot of us, that's what's happening. So to be able to see that is really actually very powerful. Ivan says what the new normal will be like. Frank shares that feeling. Lainey says, just had a birthday, the second during the pandemic, but the first one where we've been in it for a while. My circle of friends has all been vaccinated. I'm waiting to get an appointment and I have vaccine envy. Judith says, Bruce writing, thank you, Bruce. My concern is the loss of human dignity and the public health emergency for teens and adults. And Lainey says, also the fact that we're opening back up is great, but some people aren't careful and that can be scary. Okay, thank you all. I think this helps all of us just get connected to ourselves. And, I am such a believer in having conversation that really helps us evolve and makes an impact on us. So while, a lot of us, we can sit and we can have interesting discussion. I'm so excited for us to have a conversation that helps us think about, well, how do we feel like we have more agency? How do we feel like we can look at what we're thinking about here, which by the way, I'm looking over here because that's where my chat box is. That's where I'm pointing to, but we can look at where we're at and we can really think about what do I want to do about this? What can I do about this? And actually there's a lot. So I'm really excited to share this idea with you, this model. So thank you. You're going to keep in mind the thing that you were thinking about. And I am going to use my example just as an example to show you this model. And the first piece here is I want you to learn about it. So I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to give you an example using myself. And then I want us to ask questions and I want you to challenge the model if you want to, or tell me what you like about it. So you're going to listen and learn and try and think about this model. And then we're going to actually apply it to ourselves and break out into discussion groups to talk about it. So our first goal is that we understand it. So if you can, hopefully you can all see me big on the screen and you can see my whiteboard. Do me a favor and raise your physical hand if you can see my whiteboard enough that you can kind of read it. Okay?
You're clear on the screen. It looks good.
Good. I'm so glad. Okay. So here's how, I love to say it this way. Here's how the world works. And this is a model based on the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy. So this is really taking some well-known, understood information about how we work and putting it into a practical model that's visual for us to really understand ourselves and our life experience a little bit more clearly. So here's how it works. Everything in our lives falls into one of 5 categories. And the 5 categories are very related. So I'm going to walk you through it. The first thing that's happening in our lives is what we call circumstances. And the circumstances are the facts. They are the neutral, just things that are happening in the world. They are the things that we would all agree to. When I put the word neutral into the idea of a fact, a lot of us will want to argue with that and say that the facts of the world are not actually neutral. Some of them are good or some of them are bad. But I'm going to show you that that's not actually true, and I'll show you how it really works for us. So the examples of circumstances is everything from the temperature outside to like I'm standing at a desk right now, we're looking at a whiteboard through Zoom. These are facts that we would all agree to. It's also a fact when a person dies, right? In our world, if a person dies, we will think that feels devastating for us, perhaps, depending on our relationship with that person. But for a person who doesn't know the person that died, it's just a fact. It happened. So after the circumstance comes our thoughts about the circumstances. And our thoughts are just simply what's going on inside of our own minds about the circumstances. So our thoughts are, I'm going to call it the sentences in our head. And it is where we judge the world. We have opinions about the world. We have thoughts about the world. We are reacting to the world. And we have some kind of a concept of what just happened. And that's where things become good or bad in our minds. It kind of reminds me of like, if a tree falls in the woods and no one is there to hear it, did it really make a sound? Same idea. If we don't have a reaction, then it really just is this neutral thing out there. We might not even know about it. Okay, once we cross this line into our thoughts, we are now in a part of our world experience that is in our control. Even though we don't always think that, we don't realize that. Our thoughts are really in our control. We can change our thinking. The thing is, we think things over and over to the point where we believe them and we don't even notice that it's just a thought. And I'll give you examples in just a moment. But I want to give you a few facts about thoughts. We have 20 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And the only reason I'm giving you a range is because there's like a difference of opinion out there. If you were to research this, different people would tell you it's 20,000 thoughts a day. Other people will say it's about 70,000 thoughts a day, but a typical adult brain has about 20 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And we know that there's a lot of reasons why that would not be true for, in terms of illness, mental illness, different things going on, but that is typical. And these thoughts are going on unconsciously. And so here's where it becomes really important and useful. Every single thought that we have creates a feeling. Okay, so our thoughts create our feelings. So let me demonstrate with this example in my life. So right now, my kids, let me think. One of my kids is not as feeling as good about being on Zoom right now in school. So one of my kids is, I'm going to say the fact is my child is not on Zoom every day at expected times. And just to be clear, she's there a lot of the time, but not at all of the expected times. So is not on Zoom every day at all expected times. That's a fact. If she looked at the schedule, if I looked at the schedule, if the teacher looked at the schedule, we would all agree that that's not happening. It's just happening, whether we talk about it or not. And as soon as I have a thought about that, and I'm gonna dramatize just a little bit, but this is not a very big dramatization. If I think in my mind, we've talked about this, 10 times. And I don't want to talk about it anymore. And that's what's going on in my mind. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Okay. That thought causes my feelings. And I want to ask you in the chat box what you think I feel when I think that. There's my daughter. She's not on Zoom every single time. And I am thinking, we've talked about this 10 times and I don't want to talk about this anymore. Tell me in the Zoom chat, how do you think that makes me feel when I think that thought? We've talked about this 10 times. I don't want to talk about it anymore. We've talked about it 10 times. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Frustrated, upset, tired, sad. Could be any of these things. For me, Frank's giving another alternative thought. We'll talk about that too. Angry, distress, frustrated. These are all excellent examples. It really depends on my emotional go-to. It depends on what else I might be thinking about this. If it's all I'm thinking and everything else I'm feeling is rather positive, then maybe it's just slight frustration. But I'll just say for me, that makes me feel frustrated. Now, here's the very first most important part of this model. It's not that she's not on Zoom that makes me frustrated. It's my thoughts about the situation, about the circumstance that makes me frustrated. So here is where we can start to see we actually have agency. It's really powerful. I want to show you the rest of how the model works. When I'm frustrated, here's the next part of the absolute model of how we operate. Our feelings drive all of our actions. Now, I might be feeling frustrated and compassion, that because I have other thoughts that are causing me to feel compassion. We'll get there in a second. But what do you think I'm going to maybe do? What are the actions I might take when I'm frustrated with my daughter? Tell me in the chat box. What do you think? What are the actions that I might take when I'm frustrated with my daughter in this situation? What else? So think about yourself. When you're frustrated with someone in your life, what do you tend to do? And let us know in the chat box. Oh, these are so good. These are such great examples. Such a good range of all the possibilities, right? I might yell. I might punish. I might eat chocolate. And even though that sounds funny, it's actually very real, and I'll talk about that. I might walk away. I might say, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, let's say I do all of these things. I'm going to come back to them in a moment because I want to tell you a little bit more about these things that are really interesting. Let's just say I were to do all these things. I yell, I punish, I eat chocolate, I walk away and say, I really don't want to talk about it. The next part of the model, which is just the last part of all of our experience, is there's going to be real world consequences of my actions. There's going to be real world results. Not my opinion, but if I could objectively just think about it, what do you think the results would be if I did all of these things, which is possible? What would be the immediate consequences of me doing this? Yeah. Okay, so far we have child might shut down. Distance. Might shut down, get upset, rebel. These are all possible. Distance. Child might feel frustrated, hurt, right? So this is how it works. And this is what I'm going to call an unproductive model, meaning this line, unproductive. This is called a thought model. It shows us the cause and effect of one single thought. And because our thoughts are running through our heads so quickly, we do not even recognize it's happening and why. But if we slow down and we just take a look and notice, I just yelled and punished, for example, I can stop and think, why did I do that? All I have to do is look at my feeling. What was I feeling that caused me to do that? Frustration, or perhaps anger. And if I want the answer to why I'm angry, and here's the biggest first lesson, I need to look at my thinking, because it never is the circumstances. Life is going to happen. It's how we think about it that creates our feelings. So I can actually think about, I'm over talking about it. I'm thinking about how I'm over talking about it. And that's why I'm frustrated. It takes self-awareness. It takes a lot of self-awareness, and it takes humility and owning it, right? To be able to really see this. But it's really interesting and important and exciting because we have alternatives. So in a moment, I'm going to show you another piece of this, because not all of our thoughts are unproductive or are going to lead to unproductive results. The reason we're going to call this unproductive is because of the results and the actions. And for me, this feeling is not productive. That's how I know I'm in an unproductive thought model. But let me just show you the alternative here. And then I want to take questions, and I want us to be able to also just comment on it and tell me what you think about the model so far. If we take the same circumstance, so when we're doing, I use this in my practice a lot with just about every client, actually every client, and I use it in my own life a lot. And so what it is this is an unproductive model. This is where we can study our own life, and we can start anywhere. We can sit down and think about how we're acting and go backwards and figure out why. We can look at a result in our lives, think about the actions that caused it, think about the feelings that fueled that action, and figure out why. Okay, so we can study ourselves. I'm going to just show you one more thing. Our results always perpetuate our thoughts. And so we end up in a loop. This thought, ultimately, we've talked about this 10 times, and I don't want to talk about it anymore, is what causes distance. And the more distance we have, the more, and maybe the frustration and the rebellion or whatever, the more I'm going to think this thought. So I will find myself in a loop. And again, unconscious, that's what's going to happen. That is what's happening for us in a lot of parts in our lives. So what if I want to change it? What if I want to have what we're going to call a productive model? Same circumstance, nothing's changed. I want to ask you to tell me in the chat box if this was you, and you can just, relate this to anything else going on in your life that's sort of similar. What is something about this that bothers you the most, and what would you want to be different? I want you to tell me in the chat box if you were me and this was really how you were operating and you wanted to change something. Tell us in the chat box, what would you want to change the most? What would you want to dial in on and really work on being different the most about this whole scenario? And you can tell me in the chat box, what would you rather have instead? So great. So Frank, even you can tell me if we're eliminating frustration, what do we really want? So think about what would you want that would be a powerful result for yourself if you were me. What would feel good? What would have you feeling like either something is just productive? What would be productive for you? Okay. I love what you're writing about. And I want to answer this because this is where a lot of learning is going to happen for all of us. So let me read what you wrote, and I want to, and keep adding if you have thoughts about this, and then I will give you some thoughts about this. So Thais, you're saying it's so hard to initially identify that thought, working backwards. I think you have to illuminate the thought to remove the feeling. So you're onto something. When we want to change something about our lives or our situation that we have control over, because we can't control the world, we actually don't start in the thoughts. We want to start anywhere else. We want to start in the feelings, the actions, or the results. And I wanted you all to think about that before sharing that, because it helps you kind of recognize why that could be problematic. So we want to think, well, how would I want to feel differently with my daughter? Or how might I want to act differently? Or what different results might I want, right? So we've got, let me just get some more of these in here. Laura, change to more productive thoughts. Yes, we're going to get there. Figure out how we can make Zoom classes more engaging. So Laura, I love what you said. It's so common. And actually, that's us wanting to change the circumstance. But here's the hard part. We very often cannot change the circumstance. Very often it's out of our control. So we have to think about, if we cannot control every other person in the world, I wish I could give you that answer. Wouldn't that be nice? Here's the tool. Just change everything. But since that's not really an option for us, how can we really have more agency over ourselves, how we feel, how we operate? So I love that you brought that up. Judith said, or Bruce says, I would focus on miscommunication between us. Truth is important. Your daughter agreed. What then is wrong? So it sounds like maybe for Bruce, it's like you're thinking maybe we want to focus on good communication between us. And I can only control myself. So good communication from me. In any of these models, we're really focusing on ourselves. We have to really accept the fact that we cannot control other people. So that really helps us. Eliminate sorry. Interesting. Okay. Frank says, my natural tendency is to want the fact to change in the first place. Yes, Frank, that's what we all wish. But since we can't, we're going to keep looking at this. Marcia, change action section. Maybe take time to calm down, find a way to connect with a child. Okay, so we want to, maybe you want to feel calm, is what you're saying. That's kind of a feelings change. Frank says, stopping the loop before it starts. Okay, so maybe, and the loop starts here. The actions start here. So I want to feel maybe differently. Judy says it's difficult to change feelings. And so here's the clue. To change a feeling, we need to change our thoughts. We're going to work backwards. Lainey says, ask her, what's Zoom about for you? So maybe good communication from me, ask questions. That would be a great different thing for me to do. Agree with the child to discuss. So we want to talk exactly. Stay out of the future. I'm guessing that there's some fear of consequences she'll face. Okay, these are great examples. And I just wanted you to really think about this for a moment. You can start thinking for yourself to create a new reality by creating a thought model starting in any of these three places. And I actually think these two work with each other. So I'm going to leave that there. But the truth is, we really need to create a true cause and effect if we're going to change our lives, if we're going to change a situation. So let's say I started here and I want to feel just connection. Let's say when I look at this, that this is what bothers me. I don't like that my child and I are feeling so much distance and disconnect, and she's wanting to rebel, and she's hurt, and now we're disconnected. So maybe I want to start thinking about change from this place. I want to feel connected. And all I have to do is go backwards and think about all the actions that I could take and the inactions, meaning the things I could not do, that would definitely create the consequence, the result of connection. And in this case, it would be, I'm having good communication, I'm staying present maybe, right? I'm not walking away. That's what's going to create connection. I'm going to stay present. I'm going to have good communication. And if I did that, that's going to lead to connection. But how am I going to do this? I then need to work backwards and think about how will I need to feel that's really going to drive this action. My feelings drive my action. And it actually worked perfectly what Marcia said, because I think if I could feel calm, I would be ready for this, right? And so here's the hard part. Here's the hard part. I have to change my thinking to feel calm. My child is not on Zoom every day at all of the expected times. What do I need to think that is going to make me feel calm? And I'm going to actually also give us a different word that might help us for feelings in a second. But what would you think that would have you feel calm in this situation? Make up anything you want that is a true thing you like to think that would feel authentic for you. Tell us in the chat box. These are great. Take a moment and think about it. What makes you feel calm in what could be perceived as a really hard situation? These are great. In a moment, you're going to try this for yourself. So it's really fun for us to do this together. What makes you feel calm? These are so great. I love that catch, Frank. So true. Okay, here's what we have so far. This too shall pass. The existential situation sucks. I love my child. These are first world problems. Tomorrow is a new day. No one is perfect. Now, here's what I want to actually suggest. I think some of these would definitely create calm. So these are great. And the other thing is, if we really want to question this, I think calm is good, but I want to pick I'm going to pick a emotion that really is going to drive this connection. If I feel compassion, I'm really looking for a feeling that will fuel all this action. And I think compassion for me is what would have me do this. So, and actually, I think a lot of your thoughts that you all shared would create compassion. I love my child. You know, she's doing her best. She's 9. This is hard stuff. What else could be going on? Lainey says, that's a great example. Like, what else could be going on for her? Those are all thoughts that could have us so feeling compassion and would lead to a completely different outcome. And here's the key. If I actually take the time to stop and think about this, and I really, and I literally write this stuff down to kind of look at what's going on for me, especially in repetitive situations, which you've all named something that's really big for you. So you can sit down and really think about it this way. When I think about it and I unlock what I really want here and how I can create it with a very clear cause and effect, I can reinvent the situation simply by finding powerful thoughts that are going to lead to what I want. And I can practice believing these thoughts just by thinking them on purpose. My thoughts create my feelings. So even when nothing's going on, I can be sitting and thinking she is always doing her best. Like, this stuff is hard, you know, more like in her world. This stuff is hard for her. These are just examples. I only need one powerful thought if I can really use it over and over, but a lot of thoughts is really helpful. And this is perfect. This just helps me reinvent a whole experience. So I want to invite you to talk and ask questions and comment about this. I want you to share what you're thinking about this. What do you like about it? What struggle do you have with it? And what questions do you have? So I think and then we're going to break out and we're going to get to just talk with each other for a moment and think about the thing you brought up in your life. And you get to kind of look at this model for yourself and think about What is it you want to become more self-aware about? Or what is something you want to change, and how might you start to see doing that? So before we break out and do that, let's talk about this model. Okay, so I am going to change my view on my side to be able to see all of you. And if you're not on screen, which is fine, if you're able to, you have a couple choices. Tell me in the chat box if you want to say something. Or you could raise your hand physically. Or you can press the reaction button and raise your hand. So somehow let me know. Okay, Frank, why don't you unmute and tell me what you're thinking about?
So I had two thoughts. Number one, I'm not sure in terms of the transition. I'm feeling a little bit unsure about like how to make that happen, or how that how that occurs. And then the other thing that's coming to my mind is I don't have kids, I live alone. And so when these battles, circumstances, thoughts are all within yourself, I think it may be even more challenging.
Okay, I love what you brought up. Thank you for both of those questions. So because our thoughts are what's creating the feeling in the first place, the first thing to do is just study our thinking with total compassion that our thoughts are not the truth, that they're really actually just our brain being healthy. Here's how thoughts work. Once we think of thought, it creates a groove in our brain, like a record groove. It's a physical, measurable, visible groove, actually, if it were read on a machine. And what happens is, just like if you were riding a bike and there's a train track, your bike wants to fall on a train track. Your brain wants to repeat and go into the tracks that are already there. That's just a healthy brain, actually. So the first step is just start to write down and notice, what are all the thoughts I'm having that are creating all of my hurt, frustration, pain, suffering. And that self-awareness, when I say meet it with compassion, I truly mean don't feel bad about negative thoughts. They're only there because they've been there for a long time and your brain is good at efficiency and thinking it again. The transition is where you sit down, and I literally do this on paper, and you write out and design a new reality for you. And then when you just understand how it works, which I know you get it intellectually, what you're going to understand is that the change comes from changing your thinking. And so in order to change your thinking, it doesn't mean throw away your old thoughts. That's not possible with our brains. It means create new grooves. Every time you think a new thought, it's a new groove. And every time you think that thought again, the groove gets deeper. And so all you have to do, if you can come up with a model you like, a productive model you like, you are going to practice thinking the new thoughts until you believe them. And even if you don't believe them at first, and they have to be authentic to you. This is not about making stuff up and slapping on positive thinking. It's really something you like that feels good to you, that really would create an emotion for you. You're going to think it over and over. And your brain is going to start to believe that thought. And when the old thoughts come, we have a moment to say, nope, that's not how I want to think about this. And we come to our new thoughts. And I can tell you this from personal experience. I practice this in my life in all kinds of things that I have been stubbornly holding on to for decades. My parents are here, they can attest to that. And have really changed my thinking and my brain around a lot of old habits and thoughts, just because I'm focusing on it. And I work with clients on this all the time. It seems a lot easier said than done, but it's actually this very powerful personal tool. I can tell people all day long, but when it changes people is when they just take the time to really do some of the work on themselves. So you could just start with one thing, which is why I wanted you all to identify something. Just one thing that you're excited to try to work on changing your thinking around it so you can really change the way you feel about something. And the power of this is that doing it with one thing and working on it, it starts to help you do it more easily with other things. It actually gets easier and easier to then apply this to other things. So your goal, Frank, and for all of you, is to just try it and practice it. And then as you're going, you're going to start to understand it because it's your own experience. So when you said, and I live alone, I just want to say, I understand that that's a different circumstance for sure. And at the same time, the truth is all of this work we have to do on our own anyways. It's not work that we're able to do with other people. It's our own brain. So thank you for those questions. I hope that was helpful. I saw, I think Thais and Lainey both have, did you have your hand up, Thais? No, okay, Lainey.
Well, first of all, I really like the model. And I don't, you may know a book by Judy Tattlebaum called You Don't Have to Suffer, a handbook for moving beyond life's crises. My dad died suddenly some years ago, and just, can I tell a very quick story? He died very suddenly. He had a heart attack. It turns out that there was more history than I knew about, but at any rate, I came back to San Francisco, and a woman named Ilana Goldner was doing a workshop. I found a flyer at Fort Mason. I found a flyer somewhere. It was at Fort Mason, and it was called Recovery from Loss and Grief. And the speaker the second day was Judy Tattlebaum, who had written The Courage to Grieve and had just come out with a book called You Don't Have to Suffer, a handbook for moving beyond life's crises. And she has a whole section called How We Put Salt in Our Wounds. And what she talks about is the things that we tell ourselves that make it harder to recover from loss. And of course, the pandemic is an example of loss. And so what I love about what you're teaching us is that I've put this into practice in a different way, where I had to really challenge some of my thoughts about, I'm not about my dad. I loved my dad, but I was able through that work, and also in some grief groups, but this book in particular helped a lot because I challenged the habitual way I would have thought about it, the way that I would have held that experience. And because I did that, and it broke up that, what I want to say, what you're talking about, which is you go from the circumstance, the event, to the thought, to the feeling, and then you're kind of like on a roll, right? And what it does, what I learned from that you're speaking to here, is to interrupt that. And this is where my friend who said, what else could this be? I think that's a really helpful thing to think about in this connection, because what you do is you say, no. Yes, it's terrible that he died. That's true. And I have a choice in how I respond to it, how I integrate it, what I want to do with it, and especially challenging my thinking. And I've had a lot of losses since then, very close people. And it's helped enormously to use this kind of approach where you just break that cycle. So let me just say thank you so much.
Lainey, thank you for sharing. I'm sorry to hear about your loss. And I'm also really impressed. And I want to say you wanted to heal yourself, so you were looking for how to do that. And I think for us to be open to that in a moment is the first step. It really is and it really links to the first part of the model that we can learn from, which is just to say, my thoughts are not the facts. They're just thoughts. They're just sentences in my head. And that's the point where we can then sit down and want to study it and not feel so attached, right? So we have to have that recognition. And then we can really think, which is what Lainey did, and what we want to do is, well, what can I do about this? This is my brain and my suffering. I don't want to suffer. So when I know that I'm the cause of it, actually, it is empowering, and I can start to work with it. So thanks for sharing. Wonderful. Any other questions or comments before we get to break out and just think about the model in terms of ourselves? And I'll give you a simple way to do that. But I just want to see, does anyone have any other comments or questions? Marcia, I think you had your hand up before.
Yeah, this is just so great, just as this philosophy, psychology, what you're talking about, and what I expressed to you about my not completing tasks. So, and what you just said too. So the results, of course, are not feeling at peace, or continually, it's just like, what's wrong with me? I don't do this. I know how good I'll feel when I complete it. So I found a quote from Roger Ebert. He said, to make ourselves unhappy is where all the crime starts. We must try to contribute joy to the world. And I'm telling you, I wrote that down. I look at it because, I'm only making myself unhappy, by not completing what I say I want to do. And I know I feel better when I do it, but then I don't do it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
anyway,
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think you're totally getting it for yourself. Like you're seeing, I'm not at peace because I'm not completing my tasks over and over. It's repetitive for me. So you get to start thinking about how am I feeling that is fueling my inaction, my procrastination, which by the way is very common, we know. And it's very powerful for people to stop and think about what feeling creates my procrastination. What am I feeling at that moment? Right? And then, of course, the next question, what thoughts am I having that are creating that emotion? So you have a real unlock here that you can do. And I'm really excited for you, Marcia, that you can figure that out. There's a lot of amazing quotes and thinking out there about how we cause our own suffering. This part is not new for a lot of us. For me, having been in the leadership development and sort of professional and self-development world from all of my career, really, I think when I found this model, which was only in the last 5 years or so, it was the most practical, efficient way I've ever seen to look at this stuff and to try and actually create a quick new reality that's all encompassing. The work is in believing it and using it.
so when you said like thoughts are not the facts, see, that's like a real freeing to me, only that isn't what I do regarding, I mean, what do you recommend of how to really begin to integrate that thoughts are not the facts?
Well, I think it's literally just starting by recognizing it is what's going to have you stop and realize, oh, if the thoughts are not facts. So, for example, I'm not an organized person. If you think that's a fact, you'll never get past it, right? But if you start by saying, wait a minute, I'm not an organized person is just a thought. Now it just is the immediate moment you can say to yourself, well, I want to create a different reality. So I can start creating new thoughts for myself. So having the awareness and not forgetting is the key. And I think once you know this, your brain knows this. Your brain is going to chew on this. We can deny it all we want and excuse ourselves and blame the circumstances, but just knowing it is really the first step. So I promise you, just this is alone helpful.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to give us a chance to break out and talk about our own example for a moment. And I want to give you permission not to have it all solved. You don't have to create a whole model for yourself at all. All I would want you to do is share something you learned about your mixed feelings situation. It could be, I'm now seeing how I'm feeling about this more clearly, or I'm now seeing the thoughts that are actually driving my fear. Or you could talk about, I'm now seeing what I might want it to look like and how I might consider being able to change this. So I want you to take a moment to think about your mixed feelings situation that you put up in the chat box earlier tonight. Going back into the world, all of the transitions, your children or not, whatever your particular personal situation is. And you're going to get to talk about it in small groups. You don't have to have it all solved. And then we'll come back and we'll share a little bit of what came up for us and be able to ask more questions and share any ahas that you had about yourself. So we're going to break into groups. And I think what we should do is just break into groups of 3, and I know that some of you are together, which is fine. So some of you will be in a room with 4 people and some of you will be in a room with 3 people. So Carol, if you want to break us into groups of 3, and for everybody else, I think what we'll do, let's do 10 minutes. I think it's me that's going to do this now. Hold on. Carol.
That's right. You have that one control I don't have.
I'm doing it. Okay. So I'm going to break us out for 10 minutes. And you're going to see a 30-minute countdown at the end, and then you're going to be popped back in here. But if you're ready, you can always push the button to make that happen yourselves. Okay, are you ready to go? Okay, here we go. Um, 2, 3. Okay, there might be 2 or 3 of you in each room. Okay, it should take you there, maybe automatically, but if you see the button to go to the room, go ahead and click it, and I'll help you get there if you don't see the button. And I think I'm gonna move. Okay, there we go.
Marcia, Addie wants to not be in a breakout room, so.
I just moved her, so she's not in a breakout. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, good, because that one man was by himself.
And I think I'm gonna move,
Oh, I'm, well, yeah, you have to move. Carol Houghton is me also. That's my tablet. So yeah.
I just moved 2
Good
people.
job. You're promoted.
Yay, thank you. Did everyone else get moved though?
It looks like it's 3, 3, 3. It's just you are unassigned. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's great.
3 in each. Very good.
Okay, good. And Carol, both of those are you? The 2 Carols
Yes.
are you? And
Yes.
the Susan is my mom, and she went and sat with my dad. So no one's here
Ah,
right now.
Okay.
So, Marcia, if you're here, and Carol, I'm just curious if you think it's going okay, and if you have anything to tell me that would help me, feel free.
I love it. Actually, I want to share it with people because it's so good.
I think it's going great.
Are you going to sing with us at the end if I get?
No, I was just practicing something. I thought I'd use this little time to practice something. It's not, I mean, I always can, but it doesn't feel, this is something else, Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, we'll let people chat and then they'll come back and we'll discuss. And I love this group. They're so engaged and.
Yeah, it's nice to hear people so open. Honestly, sometimes people feel not comfortable expressing something that's personal, so it's so important. That's what we're missing. That's what we're missing.
I agree. And I think that it's universal. We're all going through this stuff. And so it feels good to say it out loud and to see that it's normal. And
you have to find out it's not just you. Oh my gosh, that's so hard, because we do so much alone right now. It's really challenging. I mean, really, having to feel your feelings in this kind of isolated way and especially if you're used to living with somebody before, or if you're a mom, like I would raise my kids, and for 30 years I was either married or, living with my kids, and suddenly I wasn't, and now here I am alone again. It's like, whoa, this is so odd,
Yeah.
So, thank God for my doggy. That's all I can say.
Totally. I know we're all in a different situation, and the challenges are different for all of us with the phase of life that we're in, with who we don't live with. It all raises different challenges. And I think we sometimes feel so alone in that. And I think these moments remind us, my challenge might not be your challenge, but I have a different thing that you're not having to deal with. And so it really helps us all feel like we're all going through it together. We really are.
Yes. And when you brought up the question about the challenge, I was thinking about the circumstance for me is, will I be myself again? Because I used to be singing 2 or 3 nights a week in clubs or whatever, or open mics or whatever, writing music all the time, and really being out there with people. And I'm like, gosh, now it seems so exhausting just to think about socializing. It's like often I'll be like, I'm so lonely, but God, to see somebody would just take so much energy. It's really odd. Yeah.
And so it's good to think about how do you want to feel about it when you're out with people again? And if you want to do this kind of work, how would I want to feel?
Right.
I'm going to talk about that when we come back, by the way. That sometimes a shortcut is just to think about how we want to feel.
Yeah, and I remember talking to somebody a few months ago, and they had plans for after the pandemic. This was like 6 months ago, and I'm like, you have plans? You're thinking what you want to do? It never even occurred to me to think that far ahead, because I'm still in the now. It's like, oh my gosh, and the people are like, oh yeah, when this is done, I'm going to go travel to this. I mean, yeah, I'd love to go back to Italy or something, but I was not making definite plans because life is so unsettled is the word I use.
Too. Yeah.
So yeah, at least I'm over the in the beginning it was like oh, I should go. No, I can't do that. Everything was always like that, Oh, I
Yeah.
could go do, no, I couldn't do that because there's people there or, whatever it is.
Well,
So,
I think a lot of us are like, we got used to certain new thoughts. And now we're like, wait, is it time to get used to the other thoughts again? Or are there brand new thoughts? We want to kind of, it's like we're still in it. So we're trying to figure out how we
right,
even want to take it in or work with it. Yeah.
right. It's so true. Well, as parents, it's got to be really hard for you guys. I mean, my daughters are adults and they're doing their own lives, but and watching my daughter with twins during this is a challenge too, because really there's nobody except her husband and me and her sister, and there's like a few people, but nobody nearby that can just hold the kids for her because of the pandemic. And that was really hard. Luckily she's had, I went down for a week, her dad went down for a week, a couple people have been there a little bit, but generally with twins it's like having 10 more kids. I mean, it's not like having two.
Yeah.
It's way more. So but yeah, it's really interesting what a change in life.
Yeah.
Really, I don't know how homeschooling is. How are people dealing with school with kids? That would be so hard. So congratulations to you. You're managing. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how that would have been.
Yeah.
You know,
There are benefits and there are challenges, like it was before. They're just different now. That's how I see it. Remind me, Marcia, how old is Marco right now?
Marco's 16, and one of the things that I'm dealing with is that they're just in the middle of April. He's been in Zoom the whole time, but in the beginning of April, they're going to go back to kind of like every other day cohorts back in person, and he doesn't want to go. He's saying no, let me stay home for the rest of the semester.
And
Um,
you have the choice and you actually have to
and
make
we have the choice, and I have this mixed thing. I want to push him out of his room, I want to get him back in the world, but I also he kind of bargained with me. He doesn't want to go anywhere ever. Really, he just wants to be home. So he said, "Well, if you let me stay home for the rest of the semester, I'll go to 2 weeks of summer camp."
Huh, maybe better for both of us.
Oh, great.
So I'm considering it, but I don't know if I should be considering it.
Yeah, yeah. I get it all. I get it all because
Yeah.
we're making my younger one. We have to decide because her school is going back. My older one is not going back, so that's like another part of it.
It's not going back out of choice, or
No, the school's not opening until next year.
oh, okay.
Oh,
So she's in 6th grade, and my
Yeah.
younger one's in 4th grade. So in San Francisco, 4th grade's going to open, but middle school's not,
Oh,
wow.
I see.
and high school's not. So
Yeah.
it's there's so many reasons to go both ways. But Marcia, I'm really, I whichever way you go is the right decision. Honestly, I think there's totally benefits to both, and you know that.
I'm not sure what the benefit of staying home is. I mean, I'm not sure what the benefit is. Only that he's comfortable in his room with his computer, and the benefit is just giving him a yes, like letting him feel
Right.
in charge of his choice. Okay, that's a benefit.
That's benefit, right?
Okay, yeah, that he gets to make a choice.
He chooses.
Well,
Yeah.
there's still the health benefit because we don't really know. We don't really know. So in that sense, I mean, at least it's more, it is pretty safe if he doesn't. This is me as a parent
Yeah,
speaking.
yeah. I mean, we've been both vaccinated in so, and it's true, there is always a chance that he could get sick. So yeah, okay, there's a possible benefit.
But I'm a worrywart, so that's me. I'd be like, oh my God, this thing could happen.
It's funny that he made the bargain though, because he knows exactly like kind of because he was saying, I'm not going to go to camp, I'm not going to go, and I feel like so important for him to leave his bedroom.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's hard.
Totally. Okay, they're coming back in 20 seconds.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay.
I'm sure they had a great time.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is really good.
Good.
I definitely want to share it. Really, I want to share this meeting with some friends.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really great, Nina, and you're a really good presenter too.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Very natural. Yeah.
Thorough and caring, and it's good.
Yeah, well, luckily this is my job, so it's not even far from what I'm doing all day long. It's exactly this.
Nice. Now, what is that just happened? I saw a
Oh, it
message.
says breakout rooms. Do I want to close them now? And I said, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Carol, can you share the recording with me too?
Yes, we will definitely have it. And I probably Heidi will send you a link
Okay,
because she'll have it tomorrow.
thank you.
And I'll write to her. I always write to her afterwards and tell her how it went. And so this is when you bribe me. No.
Right, right.
No.
Okay, here comes everybody. Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had a good conversation. So I would love to hear how your conversations went. Let's see. I want to first just start by seeing if anyone wants to share, and then I can always check in on the rooms. Does anyone want to share what came up? What was interesting from your conversation? Anything? Anyone want to share? You can raise a physical hand to show me if you want to talk. Frank.
Sure. So it just, I realized that in the example I gave, kind of looking at the smaller example, which is the one I brought up earlier, which is having a little bit of anxiety over the fact that my entire family is going to be in one room for Passover, except for me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be remote. And what I realized as we were talking about it is I actually kind of have applied the model to what I'm doing. It hasn't, because we don't have a result yet. I still have some uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, but I have taken actions to do what I can about it. So I was surprised that I actually did something positive with this.
Congratulations. And that everything you bring up is going to allow me to give you a little more information. And so the model is our own, right? So this is really what we're in control of. So the results are not what is everyone else going to do. Those are actually just circumstances. It's what are you going to impact? So when you feel good, you're going to act differently. You're going to show up differently. And just that alone is going to cause a certain result for you, no matter what anyone else does. So sometimes the result is I showed up the way I wanted to. And that's a great result. So thanks for sharing. And I think that might help you feel more like you do have that power to do that. Good. What else? What else came up in your room for yourself or something you heard that was interesting? Anyone want to share? It's okay. I have plenty to say if you don't want to, but I am curious. Can I ask, like in room 1, I think we had Judy, M, Marcia, and A Susan, or maybe that was, did any of you want to share anything? Just gonna, Marcia, yeah?
What is Judy's? Is the lady?
Oh wait, you're on mute again.
I see it, Judy M. Yeah, okay. Because I've got all this other really good stuff that I'm so grateful for, but as I keep saying, this not getting done what I wanted done. So I was looking at your example of starting backwards results, and then the actions. And I mean, I think that's really good. And Judy was talking about like in the morning, looking at things and wanting to do a certain thing at a time. And I think for me, once I make this list, rather than have to be so regimented that, yes, I'm going to do this today, that day, that morning, I'll look at my list and decide what I want to do and how maybe an hour, maybe whatever. But I love that freedom of thinking like just in the morning, I'll look at it and then not have to calendar everything. And yes, I'm going to do this because so that was great.
To do it the way you want, and you can feel good about that. So I love that. That's wonderful. Great.
So thank you, Judy. It was great.
Yeah, that's what discussion can help us with. Okay, great. How about room 2? Ivan, Laura, and Thais. Anything come up for all of you? Anyone want to share anything?
I appreciated my teammates, their support.
Yeah.
I think that the feeling was that of universality, that people, for whatever else we're saying, are really feeling much the same kinds of things, no matter where they are in the process of thinking, whether at the very beginning or whether the problem is being solved, that there's such similarities.
So true. We were thinking the same thing. Like, it does, we're all in different circumstances, but we each have the things that are easier for us and harder for us. Yeah.
We talked a lot about fear. I think that that came up a few times as something that we were kind of mutually experiencing, and stress. And we talked a little bit about meditation and using that as kind of like a mindful awareness of our thoughts, and also the challenges that we face in doing that practice. And then also we talked a little bit about the power of compassion as a driving force in our days, and how thinking about how that might change our day-to-day lives. Or also, I really love what Laura said, where she said that every day she strives to have compassion be a driving force in her life. And I thought that was a really beautiful goal. And it's not always,
And every day I fail.
but it's not always about the end result. I mean, yes, it is about the end result, but it's also not always about the end result. Sometimes I think it's just about the process of having that be the goal, right? And that, I think there's value in the process.
Well, also, I think you're showing the whole point of the model, because just Laura saying, I want to have compassion every day, is a thought. And that creates the feeling of motivation to be compassionate. And that's fueling you from there. So that is the model. It's like, it's always at play, whether we're paying attention to it or not. Lady had said, I think once you realize, oh, I've been on automatic pilot, a lot changes, and that's true. And I think one of the things to take away from this is, whether we're paying attention or not, this is what's running our lives. So it behooves us to stop and actually think, like, what am I doing that's helping me? And do more of that thinking. And what am I doing that's creating all of my suffering, my pain, my fear? It's just really useful. Great. Thank you for sharing. Let's see, Frank and Judith, you were in room 3. Do you want to share anything?
I already did.
You already did. Okay. And Judith, you're welcome to if you want to. You don't have to. Or the two of you. And room 4, Carol, Jean and Susan and Lainey. Susan, you want to unmute yourself? We can't hear you quite yet. There you go.
Okay. So I have to say, this experience, thank you, honey, having been a teacher all my life, and now you're teaching me, I came to a realization. I was thinking about before and after and change in my life now and what it's been, and realizing that the pandemic has actually changed who I am. And over the year, because it's the length of time that it's been, I, of necessity, but didn't need to be, became a different person. And I am much more comfortable not needing anybody in my life. I mean, that was really a big, I mean, of course, but I'm not a person who gets on the phone and visits with friends every day. That's not who my mother was, and it's not who I am. And I love being home alone and reading and enjoying the things that I like to do. And I've changed my eating habits, which has been a whole different thing, but it takes time. And I really like the life I have now. And what it's allowed, the pandemic has allowed me to say yes when I got a call from somebody to start tutoring little primary grade kids in this, all online. I don't have to leave my house. And the fact is, I realized yet again how much I loved my job. But when you love your job and then you retire because you really want to retire, all of a sudden, all that is gone. All of that. And the other problem for me was, by the time you retire when you teach, you're at your best. You know more than you ever did when you first started, or 5 years in or 10 years in. And I was really good at it. I didn't say that for many years, but in the last 10 or 15 years of my teaching, I really felt confident that I really did a good job, which is something I had never done before. And so here I am retired in my house alone. It's a pandemic and there's nobody around. And I get this phone call from a friend who says, I've been tutoring. Would you like to do this? And I thought, yeah. So now 2 days, and it's going to be 4 days soon, I'm tutoring on and I'm doing the things that I love to do, but I don't even have to put on shoes. It's like, it's wonderful. So this conversation, I don't think would have come to me had I not been listening to what's going on here tonight. So I want to thank, and Lainey, wherever she went. Lainey, thank you. You were a help to me.
Oh, you're most welcome. I have a question, Nina. It was great working, just being in that group with you. Nina, I've got a question, which is, you said Carol was in our group, but I just saw Jean and Susan.
This is Carol. I'm the Zoom host, and she accidentally used my name. Sorry, I didn't join your group, but I'm the host for this.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, was there someone else there that I didn't see? So that felt a little odd. Okay, fine. Great.
Right. So,
okay, great. All right.
Thanks for asking. Okay, good. So actually, Mom, Susan, I love what you said, and I want to give you even more credit than you might be giving yourself. And this is actually a good learning for all of us. When you think the pandemic changed me, this is a perfect example for me to show all of us. The pandemic has no effect on you. You changed your thinking. And you allowed yourself to change your thinking because of the pandemic. I think a lot of people did, actually. A lot of people then said, it's okay for me not to call people back, or to leave my house every day, or to get dressed every day, or to put pants on if I'm just on Zoom. We tell ourselves things and we use the circumstances as our reason. But actually, it's very disempowering. And I'm not talking just to you, I'm talking to all of us. And the truth is, you did the work of saying, it's okay that I have this life now. And so it really does start in the way your mind perceives and reacts to the circumstances. And I want us all to get to know that, because it reminds us always that we think it's the circumstance that has control over us, but it's really just our reaction to it and how we perceive it and how we think about it that then causes us to feel good and empowered, or bad and pain and fear and suffering. I do want to say something before we end. We have a few more minutes, and we'll close out at 8:30, and I want to answer any other questions too. This is not meant to say we should feel good all the time. That's not the point. When someone in my life dies, I want to grieve. The thing is, and I want to just remind us, it's a productive model when we're feeling the way we want and acting the way we want and getting the results, creating the results we want in our own lives. So if I'm thinking, I am so, sad that I have lost this person, and I am feeling grief, and I am dealing with that grief by working to heal myself, talking to people about it, spending time, trying to get sleep, taking care of myself. That's me responding in a productive way. I am going to grieve and heal myself as a result in a really powerful way. So the model is not to be positive all the time. It's just to be able to know yourself better and choose what's going on with more awareness. And so it's really helpful for us to understand that, like, the top row is really, I have to use a different color. The top row is really about self-awareness. It's just so we aren't not understanding what's going on, and we can really see what's causing what's happening in our lives. And the bottom row is really about creating what we want. And what we want is sometimes to feel pain and hurt and disappointment, or anger and frustration about what's going on in the world. And then it's what's coming out of that. And is that what I want it to be? And so that's what helps us really not feel like this is about, I'm happy all the time. That's not it. The other thing I wanted to share, and then I want to answer Judy's question, is that I like to also say you can kind of shortcut the whole thing sometimes in a situation when you feel like this is not what I want for myself right now. You can start just right here. How do I want to feel right now? How do I want to feel about whatever is going on? a circumstance, a fear, a situation I'm going into, and I can just work in these two columns. If I want to feel more relaxed, how can I think about this that just makes me feel more relaxed about this circumstance? Or if I want to feel more compassion, how can I think about this person in a different way? So it's a really nice, just extra piece to know that like just that alone is always available to you. Judy, what were you thinking?
This is a very productive model. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there anything written that expands on this if we want to learn more?
It's so
or
funny.
work more?
Yes. Well, there's a book called The Self-Coaching Model, which is by the woman who created the model, and it explains the whole thing. And I am happy to have to pull it up. Let's see. How will I? Carol, do you know if there's like an email that can go out to all the participants and we can send it to you?
Yes, I think there is. They can add it to because I think they send out the link to the recording of the meeting as well.
Okay.
So check in with Heidi about that.
Okay, good. So I'll send you a link.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Yeah. Lainey, do you have a question? Let's see, you're on mute still.
I didn't know I had my hand up. Sorry. I guess I would just say that I just think this is great. I'm so glad I came tonight. And I just want to say that it definitely works with grief, because it's really not about the grief itself. The grief itself is not a problem. It's a natural, when my dad died, I also found out about something called the Grief Recovery Institute, which I later referred to as the European Health Spa of Grief, because they're really there for you at first, and then when you actually need more help, they're busy selling other programs. But at any rate, the guy there said to me, grief is not a disease, grief is not a character defect, and so when you get the overlay, when you remove the overlay, all of the stuff you tell yourself that it shouldn't have happened, and all of that kind of chatter, living in the past, living in the future, all of that, and fighting with what's happening, you can't heal. And once you stop doing that, then you can actually feel the feelings. And there's your sense of life also, because you're not squashing anything or trying to change it in any way. So I want to say that I agree with you that this isn't about being happy all the time, but I think that this model works with difficult experiences as well as the good ones, because what it does is say you always have a choice. How do you want to conduct yourself? What do you want to do? And I think that's powerful, and I'm grateful to you for that.
Awesome, and I'm so glad. And what you just said, it is the whole idea that the feelings we have are not a problem. They're never a problem. The problem is that we resist feeling and we don't want to feel bad. But actually, when we're feeling hurt or pain or any kind of suffering, self-doubt, fatigue, which is like sometimes an emotion, not just from lack of sleep, actually just letting ourselves physically feel it is what heals it. The problem is not the feeling, it's how we act from the feeling if we don't catch it and just allow ourselves to feel it. I'm kind of introducing like this class level 2. There's a lot more that we can do and learn about all this stuff. But for tonight, I think that this is such a great start. And I do think it's really useful for us to not be afraid of feelings and to know that truthfully, life is 50-50. It's always going to have 50% positive emotion and 50% negative emotion. And when we're not afraid of that or frustrated by that, then when we feel the negative emotion or, perceived uncomfortable negative emotion, and we just let our body kind of have that moment, we don't make it mean anything, we don't act from there, we can calm. It's sort of like meditation, where it's like it's allowed to happen and it's going to work through us physically. Then it's not so hard anymore. The suffering is not as deep when we just accept that emotion is just part of life. It's natural. So we don't have to beat ourselves up about feeling bad. We can just let it happen and we can stop acting from there. That's the key. And then we can create a different model for ourselves and decide on purpose how we want to take something in and respond to it. Let me read these last couple comments before we close tonight. Let's see. Carol says, I try to look for the gift in every situation. Sometimes it isn't easy, but if I really stop and step back from my initial feelings, I can see what lesson or gift I'm getting from the situation. So you're taking that moment to decide how you want to think, which is so amazing. And it makes you feel grateful or compassion or whatever, something good. Lainey says, Tadelbaum says, we bang our knee, we feel it, and we move on. We don't do that with emotional pain. We hide from it or we wallow in it. This isn't said with judgment. Yes, no, exactly. That is exactly what we do. So I am a proponent of feeling our emotions and accepting them and having agency by studying ourselves. So I offer this to you as a way to study whatever is going on for you and as a way to think about how you want to create whatever you want in your life and in given situations in this transition time for yourself. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I want to thank you for your great questions and your great comments. I will share this link with you. And I wish you all just a lot of use out of this tool that you got tonight. So with that, I just want to say, have a wonderful night. And thanks for making this such a special experience for all of us.
Thank you, Nina.